You mentioned before that there was slave labor.
Yeah.
That word slave labor, how do you define that over there in China?
Well, slave labor is like invented by the head of the Communist Party, Mao Zedong, in the very beginning of their, taking the power. They said that all prisoners, at that time they called the counter-revolutionaries, should be reformed through labor. And that would be good for themselves and then good for the society. So after that, all those prisoners would be forced to do labors. Many times they can find things to do to make real money for the society. But even sometimes they don't have anything to do, then they would be forced to move heavy stuff from place A to place B, just for the sake of reforming. Because they define those counter-revolutionaries like bad people. They have bad thoughts, so they have to be, reformed. In a sense, they have to change your mind. You have to get rid of all those bad thoughts from your mind. So the only way is doing the labor, because Engels, one of those creators of the communism, Engels said that laboring created the human being. So they use that as a kind of theoretical source why they were doing this. So you have to be forced to do the labor all the time, so you can be a new person. So that is where that's come from. But right now, the slave labor is being used so widely in Chinese prisons. Almost everybody was forced to do that. If you refuse, you would be punished severely. I could hear those people screaming on another place. When I was in the factory, if somebody refused or pretend to be sick, who would be like beaten and electrified by the electric button, that kind of things. I could hear screams, and I could, I saw a lot of things like that going on. And also I heard a lot of stories. Somebody, refused to do the slave labor, then he was surrounded by, 4 or 6 policemen using the electrified buttons to, just to punish that person because he refused to do the job, do the slave labor. And many of those things export to other countries.
So the products that come out of China into other countries, they're very inexpensive.
Well, and of course,
that's because they're produced by slave labor.
Well, I would not say that all of them are produced by the slave laborers, but the slave laborers count for a big part of it. And even if those farmers, they are not slave laborers, but they would work for very little salary because they had no choice. If they go back to their villages, they would have no money at all. So if they do those labors in factories for long hours, they still can make some money. At least they can live. So that is the reason, because the Communist Party in China controls all the resources. You have no other resource to feed yourself. So the only way is work for those sweat shops, that kind of factories.
What would be some of the products that?
Well, I was forced to make Christmas lights, shoes, calendars, that kind of things, and I believe most of them exported to America. And one of these I brought here today is this shoes. It's Homer Simpson shoes. Well, this is a lovely product. If you look at this, it's a funny cartoon character, and you put your foot in here. Wear this in your bedroom, but it's made in Nanjing prison. And I was one of those slave laborers forced to do this, and it's exported to this country. When I bought this on the internet, I spent like $17.50 for the pair, but the labor cost is close to zero.
Well, Charles, what do you think about the great influx of material into the United States that's sold here at a low price, and it's all made in China? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think that's, for the most part, American people like that because the stuff from China is cheap. They can save a lot of money and buy a lot of stuff. But, looking on the other side, when you buy these things, you save a lot of money. But what you think about the communist regime? They use this as a way to control people. They use that as a way of persecuting people. And then a lot of people from this country invest huge amount of money. Think about that, what should we do, to stand up for the conscience? Then maybe we can have some other ways. Maybe you can, invest in other countries which have, better human rights record, or, do things like that. After the Communist Party, is gone, then we can still go back to China to help the Chinese people. And the Chinese people are intelligent, hardworking people. They're very good. But not under the Communist Party's control. That is a different story. So I think, if you really have a conscience, think about that. People should really have a voice on that. Don't just do this silently, buy things and then we are happy because we are saving money. Not the only choice. We have a lot of things to do.
They speak about the market economy in China today and how wonderful that is and how China is changing to the market economy, and yet you're talking about the use of slave labor or near slave labor to produce these goods. How do you match those two thoughts together?
Well, I think just the market economy is only kind of superficial slogan used by the Communist Party to attract those investment from the foreign lands, foreign investors. And if you look at the reality of the Chinese economy, it's not a market economy at all, because the Communist Party controls all the resources. If you go to China, I believe most of those investors or foreign capitalists, if they go to China, they will know the trick to do business in China. You have to have the good relationship with those government officials in order to conduct any business in China. That means they control all these resources. They give you so-called market, but they can take back any time they want. As a matter of fact, I met several, those foreign investors in Nanjing prison. One of those guys came from South Korea. He brought like $8 million to my hometown, actually. He built up 2 factories over there. After 5 or 6 years, something came out. And then he was finally found himself in prison. And all these factories were confiscated by the local officials and bought by his partners, those government officials. So the thing is, of course, there are a lot of things, like looks like a market economy, you have competition to extent, but this is only used by the Communist Party. If you look at the stock market in China, all those individual investors lose money, because what they did was they make like false information out, they make up the news. They tell this story about how wonderful this company is. Actually, it's not. And when the investors, individual investors, pull in the money and the stock goes up, and then these people, insiders, they will sell it. So there are all these kind of tricks, because all the resource and all the medium is controlled by those government officials. They manipulate the medium to tell the stories, to tell the lies. And another thing is the real estate is like developing fast in China. You can see a lot of high-rocketing buildings in all cultural cities and highways. The same thing. What they did is the government officials, they can take loans from the banks without any collaterals, like those people do in this country. So that's free loans for them, and then they have these loans to build up these highways, build up the high-rise buildings, and then they confiscate. They took like more than 50% or sometimes 70% of those money into their own pocket and use the rest of the money to build those things. But that would be like, quality-wise, it would be very bad. So make a huge amount of money, and then they use the real estate as a kind of magnet of the development of the economy. Well, the tricks they play is the same thing. So like they have like a permanent building, like they have like 100 units over there. They have sold like during the last year, they sold like 10 of those units. But they would make those media report they have sold 60 of those 100 units, and this is like very much in demand. So the price goes up like that, and all those ordinary people, they see this kind of demand, they would worried if they don't rush in, then there will be no units available. So many people just go there to buy. So the price goes up and up, up and up. And those real estate brokers, they made a huge amount of money. And there was a survey just recently came out. There were about 3,000 billionaires defined in Chinese terms, like about 12 million US dollars, the wealth. If they had this kind of wealth, they would be like counted as billionaires in China. More than 90% of them are the government officials, high-ranking government officials, or their children. So this is like, you see the so-called market economy is totally a monopoly by the Communist Party officials. They do that for their own good. They take all the money, all the resources. They control everything actually in China, the mines, the lands. And right now, if they, and a lot of stories, came out of China for those poor farmers. They live there, those brokers want to take this land by force, and they would be aided by those policemen. The farmers had nothing except the fish or sometimes farming tools to resist, but they're having a lot of crackdowns on these farmers recently. They have become crazy, you know, in developing this kind of real estate.
So you're saying that the visions that we see on television here in this country of the high-rise buildings and the modern freeways and the automobiles and the fancy clothes and so forth, it's largely a facade covering up corruption.
It is. It's you know, it's extremely corrupted, and the Chinese people know that, and the Communist Party members of that know that. But for the foreigners, they still see this facade. They still see the high-rise, you know, buildings. This looks very prosperous, and it's like a, you know, window economy. They put this beautiful window outside, but inside you don't see. They don't let you see that kind of things. So you just rush in to use the cheap labors. Of course, you know, if you have big, you know, huge amount of money, of course you can use the cheap labor in China to make certain amount of money, as you know, like some companies in this country.
Will you say that the Chinese people know that the members of the Communist Party know that?
Yeah.
Surely the large American corporations know that too. And
I believe so.
And why then do they participate in it?
Well, there are a lot of reasons. The most important thing is the money, because they always use money to lure in. But some people don't realize that you know, they do not have any bargain chips when they come to. If they really invest the money in China, and they build the factory in there, that's theirs. That's in their lands, in their hands actually, in those government officials' hands. If you do not cooperate with them, then you're going to be in big trouble. As I said, that I have, you know, met some investors, you know, ended in prison, but those are like small potatoes. If you're like big companies, of course they're going to use for a longer time, you know, because you're big, you're very, you know, influential in the world. It's like Fortune 500, that kind of companies. They're not going to like take you down like that, you know, like those small potatoes. But over time, when the time comes up, you know, when they feel that it's necessary to take your property, they can do that anytime.
And you think that's possible?
And it's absolutely possible, because I've seen that myself. I see those people in prison and what they have been through, you know. And that's only a matter of time. If you keep pouring money in there. And another thing is that so much money is poured into Chinese Communist Party in their hands. They use that to persecute Falun Gong. And then we know that Cisco, you know, go to China, build up the firewall for the communists to control people over there. The Yahoo give out all the information to communist regime, and so many people were arrested and you know, thrown into jail. I mean, it's crazy. It's pathetic.